Thank you for joining the Become a Billionaire with Me podcast. We'll journey together through the process of finding, evaluating, and purchasing our first multifamily apartment. On this show, we'll also bring in industry experts to share valuable tips that will help us become billionaires together. Here's your host, Multifamily Martin.
Welcome, guys. Today on the Become a Billionaire with Me podcast, we have a special guest with us, Anthony. Anthony is a CEO of Consolidated Care Homes. Anthony, if you wouldn't mind, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Excellent. Thank you, Multifamily Martin. I appreciate it. I started assisted living company here to be able to provide as much value to seniors as possible and be able to provide as much value to investors, the both worlds. It seems like if you look at real estate in general and society at large, the biggest problem that's coming down the pike is seniors housing. Baby boomer generation is the biggest one in American history. And in the 2020 decade, they're going to come of age to need to have assisted living, have help with activities of daily life. And just by looking at what's currently available, you see these different places that the elderly that they live in, and it's outdated, and the level of care isn't something that you would feel comfortable with mom and dad in, let alone yourself one day. Yeah. So the intention is to be able to be that agent of change to bring about the next generation of seniors housing so that feel comfortable with personally my parents, my family being able to live there, and then future be able to have a good place to be able to live as well. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Just curious, how did you get started into this? How did you get into this business? Because I know that there's several different ways that you can go, in the commercial field. You can do commercial retail, you can do multifamily apartment complexes, or, you can do mobile home parks or assisted living care homes. I mean, how did you get into that area?
They say, real estate in general, more millionaires have been made in the real estate industry than any other in American history. So it seems like there's a mirage of opportunity. But if you look at the demographics of all the different asset types, they have the industrial, they have commercial, vanilla multifamily, housing, and so on. But if you look at all those different types, and they all perform differently, and it seems like the assisted living, seniors housing, in the upcoming years, it's going to have the highest demand, and it's also relatively risky because it's the one asset type that's not connected as much to the job market. Yeah. Whereas if you look at the other, say, single tenant industrial, if it's not performing as well in economic downturn, and the tenant, they can't pay their bills, and then they don't pay the rent, and then they go, have to be evicted, then the mortgage is still 100%, but then the rent's zero. So then there's a lot of default. You just don't have as much cash flow coming in. But the beautiful thing about seniors housing is that all these residents, they don't have to worry about their 9-to-5 job because they've already clocked out for good. They're already retired, and the money that they have to be able to pay for their stay, it's from, typically you see that it's a one or the other decision. Either they will live in their house and be in the empty nest, or they'll sell the house, use that equity to be able to allocate towards their stay in the seniors housing. Some places, the higher end places are $2 million deposits sometimes just to be able to ensure financial solvency throughout the duration. Yeah. Then it is from a owner's perspective, it's very financially secure because there's the pre-qualification to be able to make sure that it's financially feasible for the residents to stay there, that they have enough cash flow to be able to go the entire duration in seniors housing. So then that's in contrast to, just the 9-to-5 paycheck to paycheck cycle where there's the paycheck to paycheck mentality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And how did you
go on set for 50,000?
Oh, wow. Sorry, we kind of broke up. How did you get into the senior care niche? I mean, did someone in your family do that, or did you just decide on getting into the senior housing niche yourself?
I read a book while I was still working as real estate agent called Your First 100 Million by Dan Pena. And it outlines the process of being able to put together board of directors to start your own company, and then be able to buy existing facility and basically buy somebody else's cash flows. So you're able to buy the cash flows of an existing business and be able to provide that as an investment for passive investors. So then in exchange for partnering with passive partners, you work as the general partner by putting together a board of seasoned veterans in order to accurately make the business run well. So then you put the team in place to make sure new acquisition, it runs well. And then you have the limited partners as the source of equity. And then the banks are satisfied because you have a strong team that's coming in, that's going to be operating it, and you have the funds necessary to make sure that there's enough working capital. So it's giving benefit to the residents because they have good quality of life. They have a professional manager, one of the best in the Northwest, that's coming in to be able to do the day-to-day operations. And then the investors, providing them generational wealth to where they're getting high returns, and it's something that is very lucrative, and it's to where it's just a net sum gain for all parties involved. And that's really just the beautiful entrepreneurial spirit of America and Silicon Valley in specific, is being able to just create. And I think that your book, Your First 100 Million, it really outlines a fast track to be able to make that happen in a short time.
That's awesome. What would you recommend that a newbie do to get into this business?
I'd say read Your First 100 Million. That book by Dan Pena, it really outlines how it is that you can fulfill your potential. It seems like, and you hear this from a lot of the people in real estate, that it's a matter of mindset. You hear it from Napoleon Hills of the world with Think and Grow Rich. Yeah. You hear it from Tony Robbins, is that it's a matter of mindset. And really what it boils down to is that the greatest waste, the greatest tragedy is the lack of living up to potential, I think. Yeah. And there's only so much that you can do as you can only expand to the possibilities that your current environment will allow you to. So if you work 9-to-5 job, there's only so much growth that you can have to be able to provide value to others. If you work as real estate agent, then there's more opportunity because it's more what you put in is what you get out, less structure. But it seems like owning your own business and going that route and being able to put together multifamily deals, that is really, I think, what attracts a lot of the people with that positive mental attitude to this industry, because what you put in is what you get out. It's, say, not as much about the deal itself, but about the people that are behind it, that are the agents of change to be able to make sure that it goes successfully. So I think that it's a lot about having positive mindset. If I were a newbie, I'd read Multimillion, and I'd make sure that going into something that I'm passionate about, so that there's no burnout, that it's something that wake up every morning and say, I'm back in business. Wake up.
Yeah, definitely. If you were to go back to a younger Anthony, let's say 5-10 years ago, what would you do different?
Oh, I don't think a single thing, because I got into it originally. I listened to a lot of the Bigger Pockets podcasts.
Yeah, same here.
But it's a treasure trove of knowledge. Right? Every time I go to the park, the first thing I pop on. And then I ended up saying, you know what, I've been listening to these things forever. I went to my very first meetup for real estate, a RIA meetup in Southern Illinois. And I thought, all right, this is it. Finally going to take action. I did the whopping on 200 stamps. And I ended up sending out 200 mailers to absentee owners. And I got this burnt down house under contract for $5,000 because that's how much the owner owed on delinquent taxes. Wow. And then every single broker in Southern Illinois, and I told them about my hot fire sale. This burned down.
Literally.
And most of them, they thought, what on earth? But sure enough, they met me and they thought, that's interesting what you're doing. And at the time, I didn't even realize what being a real estate agent, what being licensed, being a broker was. But then they sat me down and they said, if you are interested in doing this, you should pursue it as a licensed agent. And then sure enough, I ended up getting in, got my license, and I went that way. And it all boils back to taking that leap of putting down the $200 in venture capital, that seed money, to just take action, start where you're at, and the rest falls into place. So then one step led to another. I ended up working as real estate agent, and I took a whole slew of listings in Southern Illinois, and it was a whole lot of fun. And then I graduated, come out here to Silicon Valley specifically because 2/3 of all venture capital in America is spent in this area.
Right.
It's the fertile soil for the business. So it seems like just by having good mindset, you can go from selling $12,000 house 1 year ago to being able to buy $16 million property 365 days after. So it's just potential, I think, is really the name of the game.
Yeah, that's definitely true. There is a lot of money flowing around in the Bay Area and Silicon Valley. A lot of money from international Chinese money coming in to VC, startups. There's a lot of money here. Moving on to our next question. What is the hardest thing about this business? What makes your life tough trying to do what you're doing?
It seems like it's all a waiting game because you can put the applications in, and then you have to wait, say, 2 weeks to get your LLCs back, and you reach out, and then you have to wait for a response after the due diligence is done, and then you have to wait for the different licensing forms to come back and for everything to be processed, and so it just seems like it's just a waiting game. And I think that it is. Other than that, I mean, everything's fantastic. It's it's just just waiting at the pace. Other people, they have to wait until Monday morning instead of getting into it Sunday. So it's just waiting on other people. But other than that, I think it's a hoot. And I think and we mentioned about money, but there's so many different ways that you can structure the deal so that it doesn't even require money. Yeah. And just going through this learning experience is phenomenal, because I've found out with your first 100 million, this book, that you can use seller financing. So then, whereas you look at standard house, say 80% mortgage, 20% down payment. But if you were to use, say, a 50% seller holdback in second position, then you can go to the bank all day long and say, well, I'd like to get a first position loan for 50%, please. And that strategy, 0% down. So it really is incredible. And I think that that's something that they just don't publicize enough. I don't think that it's widespread enough to be able to use these kind of out of the box different strategies. And then there are the installment sales, to where the sellers, and you can explain this to them, is that the sellers, they can take that seller holdback and then they can get it to where it's a installment sale. And then basically they'll get a loan for that 50%. So then they can get that amount in cash down, and then they can just be able to allocate that to be able to get a higher return than they would otherwise be getting for the 5% interest that you're paying them annually. So it's the sellers getting what they want. The bank is getting a very low leverage LTV loan, and the sellers, they get to retire. They get to go on long-awaited vacation after maintaining the facility for 20 years as mom and pop. It's a net positive gain for all parties involved. And it's just thinking outside the box and being able to come up with those creative solutions, then it's something to where everybody benefits as a result.
Yeah. What would you recommend? What would be the best way for our listeners, someone starting out, what would be the best way to find a deal?
Kissing a lot of frogs to find the princess. There are many different ways that I've been able to create deal flow, of which I'd say that the most lucrative are conferences and Facebook. Conferences and Facebook. I went to the trade show specific for seniors housing, the NIC conference, for instance, and it's this National Investment Center. And sure enough, you can find brokers there, and you tell them, we're looking for property in XYZ location. And they say, well, just so happens that we have a thing that's coming up. And then sure enough, you can end up finding deals that way. And then being able to go on Facebook. And then there are some forms, not Bigger Pockets. They don't allow the solicitation, but then there are some forms that are online to where you can go and you can find these wholesalers that find the off-market deals. And then just like a broker, they'll charge 3% commission, but it is incredible. I messaged one of these people out of the blue and I said, hey, we're looking for assisted living. I show proof of funds letter, and bam, in the inbox, 20 new properties, everything exactly what it is. Oh my gosh, instant deal flow. I've heard that accountants as well, if you establish a relationship with an accounting firm, then they are the ones that have the eyes and ears about in the business world to be able to locate motivated sellers. So then I'd say the trade shows that are out there, real estate meetups, and Facebook. It's incredible. There's a lot of, especially local here, you go to real estate meetups, you can go to Facebook, Bay Area off-market wholesale deals, groups like that. I found one deal, and it was 9 o'clock on a Friday afternoon, and I saw this wholesaler that put it on. It was 9 minutes. It was on this group. I called them up and I said, we got to get this in contract right now. I just checked the comps. It's all set. It's ready to go. And sure enough, it was a deal. And we ended up getting it just on Facebook. It's incredible.
That's awesome.
So,
wow.
Just using that stuff, very, very lucrative it can be.
Yeah, that's great. That's awesome. The hardest thing for me when starting out was finding the right vendors. And you mentioned Facebook. And I know that you probably see this a lot in the Facebook groups, like, hey, I'm a private money guy, send me your deals at joe@gmail.com. And, some of these people are probably not reputable, but it definitely seems shady working with them. What are there any vendors that you would recommend, as a newbie getting into this business?
If you look at the process in your first 100 million, you find a team. You find a team to work with, of seasoned veterans that have already been in business. Yeah. So then find these people that have already been on the trenches and boots on the ground experience. And then you ask them, which lender would you refer? Yeah. Which accountant would you refer? Which law firm should we go? And then because they already have that pre-existing relationship, then you know that they're legitimate. And sure enough, there have been some people that have been able to work with us, and they've been worth their weight in gold, referred through that network. Yeah, that's definitely true. In fact, that's how I funded my first deal. It was through one of my buddies who was who does flips here in the Bay Area. They'll actually be on the podcast as well. But yeah, they recommended a lender, and that's how we funded our first deal, and it was amazing. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that social network has a lot of value. Yeah. If people want to get a hold of you, what would be the best way for some of our listeners to get a hold of you if they have any questions on assisted living or something like that? I'd love to talk about the RCFEs, anything about assisted living or seniors housing. That is my bread and butter. Find out on consolidatedcarehomes.com. Okay. And we have the California Assisted Living Investors. And feel free to join that as well to be able to find more deals. Some people post deals there, and then there's a lot of information about starting assisted living and being able to get into the space. So love to be able to connect with you all there. Wow, that's awesome. Great. Thank you, Anthony. You have been very valuable to our podcast. I think our listeners will love to hear what you're doing in the assisted living space. And it was awesome interviewing you, and I definitely learned a lot from you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Multifamily Martin. Words are worth a billion. Thank you.
All right. See you later, Anthony. Take care.
Thank you for listening to the Become a Billionaire with Me podcast. If you liked what you heard, please help by giving us a 5-star review on iTunes. If you have any suggestions, please feel free to make a comment in the comment section. Let's become billionaires together.